This is the Grant Caldwell Report, and we begin tonight with a major development in the Nancy Guthrie case. Investigators say they've recovered a DNA sample from a black glove found near her home, and they believe it visually matches the gloves worn by the masked man seen on doorbell footage right before she vanished. In the next 60 seconds, I'm going to walk you through exactly what's confirmed, what's still uncertain, and the one accountability question most coverage is skipping, because once you see how these pieces connect, the entire timeline looks different. Here's what is confirmed at this hour. The FBI says preliminary DNA testing prod unknown male profile from that glove, but officials also say they are still waiting on quality control and official confirmation before submitting it into CODIS, the national DNA database system used to search for matches. And that matters because CODIS isn't a magic button, it's a process. If this profile clears verification and goes in, it becomes a potential pathway to an identity. If it doesn't, it's a dead end, and the public deserves to know which it is, and when. Now, the glove itself is part of a bigger evidence problem. Investigators reportedly collected roughly 16 gloves in the area, and officials say many were likely dropped by searchers, not by a suspect. But they're emphasizing this specific glove is different and appears to match what's seen on video. So here's the key question to hold on to as we move forward. If law enforcement believes the person in that video is their primary suspect, what is the concrete benchmark for progress? An ID, an arrest, a verified match? And how quickly will the public be told when that threshold is actually met? And one quick thing, if you want responsible updates as this develops, subscribe now so you don't miss critical updates as soon as they break. Now here's where this case shifts from headline to hard reality. Yes, investigators say a glove recovered near the search area contains DNA. Yes, reports indicate it may visually resemble the gloves worn by the masked figure captured on surveillance footage near Nancy Guthrie's home. But similarity is not confirmation. DNA recovery is not identification, and recovery of an item is not proof of involvement. What matters next is process. According to reporting, the DNA profile recovered from the glove is described as an unknown male profile. That means it has not yet been publicly tied to a named individual. Before anything changes legally, that profile must pass verification standards and be submitted into CODIS, the National Combined DNA Index System. If there's a match in that database, investigators may have a direction. If there isn't, this becomes a longer forensic road. And here's the part most casual coverage skips. Even if there is a match, prosecutors still have to establish context. Was the glove dropped the night Nancy disappeared? Was it contaminated? Could it belong to a search volunteer? Remember, authorities reportedly recovered numerous gloves in the area, many believed to have been left behind during search efforts. That complicates the evidentiary value immediately. So the real pivot point in this case isn't DNA found. It's chain of custody, timeline confirmation, and exclusion testing. Investigators will need to establish when that glove entered the environment. They'll need to rule out innocent explanations. They'll need to show that the DNA profile is not secondary transfer. Those are not dramatic steps, but they are decisive ones. Now step back and look at the broader investigative posture. Law enforcement previously warned the public that this search could take months or even years. That language suggested limited actionable evidence at the time. If this glove truly ties to the individual seen on video, that posture may shift from broad search to focused suspect development. But we have not seen that shift publicly yet. Watch for subtle changes in wording from officials. Do they begin referencing a person of interest? Do they discuss forensic timelines? Do they narrow the geographic scope? Those are signals that the investigation is moving from exploratory to directional. Until then, the glove is a lead, not a conclusion. And in complex cases like this, the difference between those two words determines whether justice moves forward or collapses under premature assumptions. Let's move to what comes next, and the accountability question that now becomes unavoidable. Now the case enters its most sensitive phase. If the DNA profile from that glove clears forensic verification and is entered into CODIS, investigators will either get a hit or they won't. And that single fork in the road determines the trajectory of this investigation. If there's a match, the focus narrows immediately. That doesn't mean arrest, it means corroboration. Investigators would then need to confirm location data, establish opportunity, verify alibis, and reconstruct movement. DNA alone does not prove timing. It proves presence at some point. Prosecutors will need to connect that presence to the disappearance itself. If there's no match in CODIS, the case doesn't collapse. It becomes a longer forensic effort. That can mean genealogical analysis, targeted testing of known individuals, or continued evidence collection. But that route takes time, sometimes significant time, and it explains why officials previously warned the public that this case could stretch months or longer. Here's the accountability test. Law enforcement has now publicly acknowledged DNA from a glove that may match the masked individual seen on video. That is a meaningful disclosure. The next responsibility is clarity. When will the profile be submitted? When will the public know if there is a match? What threshold moves this from lead to person of interest? In complex investigations, transparency doesn't mean revealing everything. It means explaining process without compromising it. The public doesn't need speculation. It needs milestones. And there's another layer. If this glove does tie to the individual seen on surveillance footage, investigators must demonstrate chain of custody and environmental context. The area reportedly contained multiple gloves, some likely left during search efforts. Defense attorneys will scrutinize that detail. They will challenge contamination. They will challenge timing. That means the case must be airtight before any public action is taken. So watch carefully, not for headlines, but for language shifts. When officials begin speaking about forensic confirmation instead of testing underway, when they reference identified individuals rather than unknown profiles, that's when the posture changes. Until then, this remains what authorities have described from the beginning: active, complex, and unresolved. Let's close this with what viewers should focus on moving forward. Here's where this stands tonight. A glove has been recovered. DNA has been extracted. Investigators believe it may visually match what the masked individual was wearing near Nancy Guthrie's home. That is not a rumor. That is a documented investigative development. But it is not an arrest. It is not a named suspect. And it is not a solved case. The next movement in this story will not come from online speculation. It will come from formal action. A confirmed CODIS hit, a publicly acknowledged person of interest, a warrant, a charge, or a clear statement from authorities that testing has ruled something out. Until one of those things happens, the investigation remains exactly where officials have placed it: active, complex, and in verification mode. When law enforcement warned earlier that this search could take months or even years, that language signaled limited actionable evidence at the time. If this DNA lead holds, that posture may shift. But if it doesn't meet prosecutorial standards, investigators will slow down, not because the case lacks urgency, but because it requires precision. Justice built on assumption collapses in court. Justice built on process survives it. So here's what to watch: a change in tone from testing underway to forensic confirmation, movement from unknown profile to identified individual, coordination between agencies signaling transition from search to case building. Those are the real indicators. This case remains open. The search continues. Accountability, when it comes, will come through documented evidence, not headlines. This is the Grant Caldwell Report. We don't rush conclusions. We don't trade accuracy for clicks. And we stay with the story until the facts are confirmed. If you want responsible updates as this investigation develops, like this video, subscribe, and turn notifications on. When verified information moves, you'll hear it here, clearly, carefully, and without speculation. We'll continue to follow this.